Abba, you're muted.
You're telling me to unmute. Okay, can everyone hear me now? You're telling me to unmute. Okay, can everyone hear me now? Okay,
We can hear you. I can hear you.
okay. Thanks, Shmuel.
Hey, good morning, Rabbi. Mazel tov.
Thank you. Sorry, the first few moments I was muted without realizing it. Okay,
Question for you. You have
Yeah.
a garbage can next to where you're davening.
yes.
It's pretty much empty, but you still have a garbage can. Is that okay in terms of?
If there's a garbage can that doesn't have any offensive odor, it's not a problem.
Okay.
Later, and when we get to the third parak, we're going to learn some of the halachos of the limitations of reciting Kriya Shema in clean places, where there's no dirty diapers and there's no malodorous things. Okay, let's go on. Now we're going to talk about something that the Mishnah had said, which was that even if you're in the middle of Kriya Shema and someone fearsome approaches you, and it would be considered disrespectful and dangerous for you to ignore them, then you're allowed to interrupt your Kriya Shema in order to greet them. So we're on Yud Tes Amid Beis, and let's see, we're up to where it says Uve Emtza, it's the fifth line, Uve Emtza Shoel Mipnei Hayira, that in the middle of Kriya Shema, you're allowed to, we had seen that if you're in between the paragraphs, that if someone honorable comes over, meaning that they're not intimidating, you're not afraid that if you ignore them, anything bad will happen to you. But at the same time, it's a Rosh Hashiva, so you want to be able to greet them properly. So that you're allowed to do as long as you're in between the paragraphs. So Bein HaPrakim, in between the paragraphs, there's a certain leniency because you're not in the middle of the paragraph of the topic. So therefore, we allow you to say Shalom Alecha, peace upon you, or any other kind of greeting, even if you're in the middle of the blessings of Kriya Shema. Now, this is not halacha l'maisa, just want to, because nowadays we don't do that. But the next part is Uve'em Sashol Mipnei Hayira would be theoretically halacha l'maisa, that if a person who's intimidating, meaning they're a king or a police officer, that if you don't respond to them, they could arrest you and haul you off. So then even if you're in the middle of Kriya Shema, you're allowed to interrupt your speech. So the Gemara is going to now discuss the proper conduct. So Tane, the Brisa says, Hashoel bishlom rabo, o b'mishu hu gadol mimenu batorah, harishus biyado, that if a person says shalom to his Rebbe, or to someone who is greater than him in Torah knowledge, then he is permitted to do so. And now, why would I think you're not permitted to do so? Why would I think that it's not permitted? We're not talking about, this Bryce is not talking about Kriya Shema. It's talking about the general principle that if you happen to encounter a great scholar, Torah scholar, you're allowed to initiate a greeting. You're allowed to say, Shalom Alecha, Rebbe. How are you? Shalom Aleichem, Rebbe. Now,
in the middle of your davening.
No, not in the middle of your davening.
At all.
Just at all. The question. This is a question of proper etiquette. Now that the Bryce is dealing with, I might have thought that if you encounter someone who's a very honorable person, maybe you're obligated to be silent and wait for that person to acknowledge you before you initiate conversation with them. But that apparently is not the case. If you take a look in footnote number 5, he says, Ofen she'elas shalom haroi l'ravhu, the proper way of extending a greeting to a rabbi, someone who's a Torah scholar, is Shalom Alecha Rebbe, peace upon you, my master. Kimafurish lekaman. Velo Shalom Alecha keder Shalom Alechavero. Not just Shalom Aleichem or Shalom Alecha, which is what you would say to a friend. You'd have to add the word Rebbe. Habraisa ba'a lahotzi min hasvara hamekubelas b'makomos mesuyamim. The Braisa is coming to disagree with the practice of certain places that we'll see later on. She'ein zeh derech kavod lishol b'shalom misha gadol mimenu b'chachma b'shum tzura shehi. That there was, apparently we're going to see that there were places where if you encountered someone who was greater than you in Torah stature, you weren't even allowed to greet them. You'd have to wait for them to acknowledge you before you said anything. So let's go on in the Gemara. Hada Amra, from this we may learn, Sha'adam tzarech lishol b'mishu hu gadol mimenu b'Torah. Now that the Braisa has said that it's permissible to do so, now that it's permissible, you would be obligated to do so. Because once I know that it's permissible and it's not a breach of protocol, then it's only appropriate for a person to initiate a greeting to a Rebbe. Now, va'od min hadadatani. And we can also prove this point from another brisa that we're about to see, which is dealing with when a person suffers a loss of a close relative, he has to tear kriya. He has to tear his clothing. So a person is in the hospital. He's with a very sick person who's his relative, and he thinks that the person is dead. Vikara, and he tears his garment. V'chazra bo neshama, and then all of a sudden he realizes the patient is not dead yet. He's already torn kriya, but the patient is not dead. So the person takes another gasp of air. This happens sometimes. I actually dealt with this the other day, where someone was calling me and said, I'm not sure if my mother's dead yet. What am I supposed to do? Because, it happens sometimes that they stop breathing for an extended, for several seconds, and then they start up again. If anyone has been around a person who's dying, they understand that. So what are you supposed to do? If I've already torn kriya, do I have to go ahead and tear kriya a second time when the person's neshama actually leaves? So im al atar eno tzarech likroa. So if it's just shortly after I tore kriya the first time, then they truly expire. I'm not obligated to tear a second time. But ve'im la'achar zman tzarech likroa. But if it's after an extended period, in other words, let's say I thought they had passed, but they really hadn't, and it took an extra 2 days for them to pass away. So then when they actually do pass away, I have to tear kriya. Now, the kamahu al atar kedei dibor. The kamahu kedei dibor. Now, the question is, how long of a period are we talking about? How long of a time lag are we talking about where I don't have to tear kriya a second time? So the Brisa says, toch kedei dibor, that it's actually the amount of time that it takes you to say a certain formulation of words. That's called toch kedei dibor. Okay. So, and the kamahu kedei dibor, and how much is that? Rabbi Simon b'shem Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, kedei she'ela shalom ben adam lechavero. The amount of time that it takes to greet your friend, which is shalom alecha, the time that it takes you to say 2 words. So if the patient hasn't expired yet, and I've already torn kriya, then as long as they expire within just a couple of seconds afterwards, I don't have to tear kriya a second time. But if it takes longer than the amount of time that it takes to say shalom alecha, which is what, a second and a half, 2 seconds. So then I would have to tear kriya a time. But Abba Bar Chana b'shem Rabbi Yochanan Kedei she'ela shalom ben harav letalmid v'yomar lo shalom alecha Rebbe. No, he says it's not 1.5 seconds, it's like 3 seconds. Because not only do you say Shalom Alecha, but you have to say Shalom Alecha Rebbe, which is an extra 0.5 second. All right, whatever it is. Now it's maybe 2 seconds instead of 1.5 seconds. So it's a 3-word span, not a 2-word span. So what you see from this discussion is that we learn from here that it is only appropriate for a student to initiate this kind of greeting to his Rebbe. The fact that Chazal used a greeting of Shalom Alecha Rebbe to gauge a halachic time span is indicative of the fact that this is something laudable. This is something that the rabbis endorse, because otherwise they would have found another 3-second formulation other than Shalom Alecha Rebbe. Okay, but the fact that they say that Shalom Alecha Rebbe is the what's the word I'm looking for? Is the gauge, the measurement. It means that those 3 words are appropriate words to say, to speak. Now, the Gemara, we turn the page. The Gemara now brings a story about this. Rabbi Yochanan hava mistamech al Rabbi Yaakov bar Idi. Now, so Rabbi Yochanan was elderly when this story takes place. And so he was leaning on Rabbi Yaakov bar Idi as they were walking along the path. V'haya Rabbi Elazar chamile umitamer min kadamoye. And Rabbi Elazar, who was a student, one of the premier students of Rabbi Yochanan, saw him from a distance and decided to hide so that his Rebbe wouldn't see him, because he wanted to avoid greeting him. Okay, Omar, so Rabbi Yochanan, I guess, saw him from a distance, even though Rebbe Elazar tried to hide. Like he saw him sort of slip away. So Rabbi Yochanan said to Rabbi Yaakov, who was attending to him, he said, Ha tarte milin hadin bavloi avidbi. He says, this Babylonian is committing 2 mistakes in his conduct with me, referring to Rabbi Elazar. You see that Rabbi Elazar, the way he's hiding from me? He's doing 2 things wrong. Chada de lo sha'al b'shlomi. First of all, he's not initiating greeting to his Rebbe. And v'chada de lo amar shemuasa mishmi. And second of all, he doesn't always cite me when he quotes a halacha from me. Sometimes he will teach and he will say, this is the halacha, but he doesn't give me proper attribution. Now, and Rabbi Yochanan felt that this was wrong, and Rabbi Yochanan bothered Rabbi Yochanan. Like when my student teaches over things that he heard from me, he should give me proper attribution. And this is also a halacha, by the way, that when you quote Torah knowledge that you've acquired from a Rebbe, you have to say, I heard from Rabbi so-and-so. Okay, now we'll get back to that in a minute. And we're going to talk a lot about, I want to get into the halachic issues with this, but eventually we will. So Rabbi Yaakov bar Idi, who's a friend of Rabbi Elazar, feels bad that Rabbi Elazar is being criticized by his Rebbe, so he tries to minimize the offense to his Rebbe, Rabbi Yochanan. So Amar le, kach inun nahagin gabehan. That Rebbe, you don't understand. In Bavel, that was the way that we conducted ourselves. When we would see our Rebbe, ze'era lo sha'al b'shlomei derabba, that the young one or the smaller one would not initiate a greeting to the greater one. Ze'era means the small one. There is a Rebbe ze'era, but the word ze'era means the smaller one or the lesser one would not initiate a greeting to the greater one. Di'inun mekaimin ra'uni na'arim v'nechabau. As it says in Eov, they wanted to fulfill what it says in the book of Job, that the youths see me and they hide. The youths see me and they hide. Now, if you look at note 13, you'll see the context of that verse. So, Beparsha zu misefer Iyov Beparsha zu misaper Iyov al ma'amadu biyamim avru lifnei shepagabo midas adin. That in that section of the book of Iyov in chapter 29, he's discussing how his life was before he had been afflicted by God. Mi yitaneni chiyarchei kedem. If someone would only put me back to the way I was in earlier days, kasher hayisi bimei charpi, when I was in my youth and I was much sharper, b'tseisi sha'ar alei kares berachov achin moshavi, when I would go to the gates of the city and I would be walking down the street, ra'uni na'arim v'nechba'u v'yishishim kamu amadu. The youths would see me and they would run and hide, and the elders would arise when I would pass by. In other words, Iyov was a really important guy in his time. He was wealthy. He was the philanthropist of the city. Everyone had great respect for him. So he says, when I would walk down the street, the young'uns would hide from me, and the elders would stand in my presence. So we see that there was a certain bashfulness that the lesser people would have in front of a greater person. The Bavel nahagu kimashpos pasuk zeh, the savru shein derech kavod lishal b'shlom harav. And so in Bavel, that was considered to be the appropriate practice, to not initiate a greeting. And so if you saw someone who was a great elder, you would actually try to disappear so as to avoid having an uncomfortable silence with a great person.
Does the Bavli rule differently? Does it include this sort? What is the
Yeah. So when we look at the halacha, we're going to see this conflict between the Bavli and the Yerushalmi as to how we paskin.
Is there a difference in Minhagim for the Ashkenazim and Sephardim today about how they greet their Rav?
Well, the Sephardim are in general are much more respectful. Yeah, it's true. It's true. Yeah. They're very big on Kvod Harav. Yeah, they'll go over and like there's a rabbi. Well, I won't get into it. But yes, in general, yeah. The Sephardic rabbi is my rabbi, kiss his hand. The Ashkenazi guy, chop liver. Okay. So anyway, if you look at the next paragraph in the footnote 13, he says the Rosh, who's a medieval commentary on the Bavli, Mavur she b'nei Bavel sovrim shemin adin asur l'talmud lishol b'shlom harav v'chedivrei habraisa b'Bavli, that he rules that in Bavel it was asur to initiate a greeting to your Rebbe, as the Braisa that is cited by the Bavli says, "V'hanosein shalom l'rabo gorim l'shchina shetistalek miYisrael." The Braisa in the Bavli says that it's really bad if you initiate a greeting to your Rebbe, that you cause the divine presence to leave Israel. V'chein mefarish talmidei Rabbeinu Yonah es haBraisa, ve'ilu Rabbi Yochanan sover shaBraisa ena oseres nisina shalom l'rabo ela kederech shama l'chabero shalom alecha. However, Rabbi Yochanan does not interpret the Braisa that way. Rabbi Yochanan understands the Braisa to mean that it's forbidden to initiate a greeting to your Rebbe if it's done in a common way. Meaning, if you greet your Rebbe the same way that you greet your friend, that's the problem, okay? But not that you cannot initiate a greeting to your Rebbe. So if you go over to your Rebbe and you say, Shalom Alecha, and you don't say, Shalom Alecha Rebbe, or you say, hey, Rabbi, how's it hanging? Or whatever you want to say to him, then that's, if it's a disrespectful kind of greeting, so then that's the problem. Avol b'derech kavod shalom alecha Rebbe mutar. But if it's a respectful greeting, then it's perfectly okay. Chafi Shapirshu Rashi v'Taisus Shanas Divrei Abayis Braisa. Gam harama yoredeya havius minhagam shel b'nei Bavel lahalacha b'shem yesh omrim. He says, and the Rama actually cites the Bavli as the way that some people comport themselves, that you're not supposed to initiate greeting to your Rebbe, period. Ulam bebir hagrasham mefarishim mikach sheRebbi Yochanan hikbet al Rebbe Elazar mashma shadinin. Okay, but the Vilna Gaon cites the Yerushalmi, and he says from the story in the Yerushalmi about Rebbe Yochanan, who was critical of Rebbe Elazar because he was hiding from him. He felt, you see from here that that's not the proper way to comport yourself. Ela b'nei Bavel hayu osim kein mitzad minhag bilvad, and the people in Bavel, that was their common practice, but not that it's the correct practice. I find this fascinating because I think what you see here is a conflict in proper etiquette that existed 2,000 years ago, or close to 1,500 years ago. You can see that some of this conflict, proper etiquette, has vestiges even today. There are some people who feel very comfortable to go over to a rabbi and extend a greeting to him, and other people who will stay away. Today, it's considered to be respectful to go over to the rabbi and say, Good Shabbos, a rabbi, how are you? And stuff like that. It's considered to be the right thing to do.
They have a nice minhag in the shul where after services where people come up and say shalom aleichem to you.
Yeah.
They don't do it. I don't see this at other shuls happening.
Yeah.
So it's nice to practice.
After COVID, it sort of stopped, and a lot of people stopped doing it, but some people still do it. I think it's very, very nice.
Rabbi, one other thing is today when we live in an email world, often there's you're getting in touch with a rabbi or something like that. Is there probably, I sometimes see, especially on chat groups and stuff like that, how people just get into a conversation. There's not that initial sort of respect to the Rav.
Well, I don't know. In general, etiquette has fallen by the wayside in so many ways in the modern world, right? So some people, some people are old school, and they try to initiate a proper salutation, and other people don't, I don't think that the same kind of rules of etiquette apply today. I'm not saying that they shouldn't apply. I'm just saying that that's just the reality of the world in our rapid form of communication, where everything's got to be instantaneous. Okay. So anyway, Reb Yaakov is trying to explain to Reb Yochanan that Reb Elazar is not really a bad guy. It's just that in Bavel, you have to understand that in Bavel, people avoided greeting their Rebbe because they felt that there might be something disrespectful about initiating a greeting. And then the Gemara now says, here's how Reb Yaakov was able to address the second criticism that Reb Yochanan had about Rebbe Elazar, in that he didn't always cite his Rebbe when he would teach his Torah. So, Mimahalchin, as they continued walking, Chamilei Chad Beis HaMedrash, Reb Yaakov Bar Idi showed Reb Yochanan a certain old building that was used for Torah study. Amar Lei Hachahava Rebbe Meir Yosef Darash. He pointed out and he said, Rebbe Yochanan, this little Beis Medrash that we just walked past, this was the place where Rebbe Meir used to give his shir. Now, Rebbe Meir had already passed away, and he was already long gone. But he says, Va'amar Shemuasam in Shemeda Rebbe Yishmael. And when he would teach, he would cite his Rebbe Yishmael, and quote him and give him proper attribution. However, Velo Amar Shemuasam in Shemeda Rebbe Akiva. But when he would teach over Torah that he had heard from his Rebbe Akiva, he would not say, my Rebbe Akiva said as follows. So the question is, why not? Why didn't he cite Rebbe Akiva? He only cited Rebbe Yishmael. So Amar Le Kol Alma Yadin the Rebbe Meir Talmido the Rebbe Akiva. So Rebbe Yochanan said, well, that's not unusual. Everyone knew that Rebbe Meir was the premier student of Rebbe Akiva. So if he said something, it was implicit that he was quoting Rebbe Akiva, right? Because everything that Rebbe Meir knew, he got from Rebbe Akiva, unless he said, I got it from Rebbe Yishmael. Then he would quote Rebbe Yishmael. But if he said it without attribution, it was implicit that he was quoting Rebbe Akiva. So, Omar Lo, so Rebbe Yaakov says to him, Kule Alma Yadin de Rebbe Elazar Talmidei de Rebbe Yochanan. And that's the reason why Rebbe Elazar doesn't quote you. It's not because he's being disrespectful to you, just the opposite. He takes it as a given that anything that he teaches is because he learned it from you. And therefore, he doesn't feel it necessary to provide you with proper attribution. Okay. So that's basically the approach that Rebbe Yaakov took in order to appease Rebbe Yochanan for his two criticisms. Criticism number one was that he was hiding. Don't take it the negative way, Rebbe Yochanan. That's the way the Babylonians comport themselves. They're not such social. It's almost like the difference. By the way, there is such a theory, although it's been discounted by other scholars, that the Babylonian minhag is more the Sephardic minhag, and Eretz Yisrael is more the Ashkenazic minhag. Here you see just the opposite, that certain things that were adopted by Bnei Ashkenaz are more Babylonian in nature. It all depends on social mores of the parent culture also. It could be in Babylonia, people were less friendly. People are more gruff. One of the things that I noticed when I came here, I'm from California. You walk down the street, everyone says, good morning. You go to the clerk at the cashier at the store. Everyone's chatty and talking and friendly. Here, people are not as chatty. People are not as friendly. People are more reserved and conservative. It's not because they're less friendly, but rather because they're more respectful of people's space, of people's privacy. Is that your experience also? Yeah.
Canadians are more reserved.
Canadians are more reserved. Yeah, just in general. So anyway, all right, we'll hold it here for today. Let me wish you all a good Shabbos, and we'll pick this up in Eretz Hashem on Monday. Take care.